Adrian Voss had been betrayed before, but never on live television. Yet tonight, under the glittering chandeliers of the Manhattan Hilton ballroom, he smiled like a man untouched by danger. He was hours from discovering the woman he loved would one day bring his empire to its knees. But how does a billionaire groom end up broken on his own wedding day? Why does a woman who swore eternal love risk everything for revenge? And what could possibly turn forgiveness into the most shocking act of all? The cameras rolled, the charity gala gleamed. At the center stage sat Clara Miles, the journalist whose questions could slice diamonds. Her voice was calm, but her heart pounded against the microphone clipped to her gown. "Mr. Voss," she began, "how does it feel to be called the most admired man in America, and the most ruthless, in the same breath?" The audience froze between admiration and fear. Adrian tilted his head, eyes narrowing slightly. "Admiration and fear," he said, "are two currencies that spend the same. But only one buys loyalty." It was a dangerous answer, but it made the crowd laugh. Clara didn't. She had promised herself this would be just another interview, but the weight of her father's ruined business whispered otherwise. She knew this man had changed her family's fate, yet she couldn't stop noticing how his confidence filled the room. Somewhere beyond the lights, Marcus Hale, Adrian's former partner, watched with predatory amusement. And in the back, Lena Voss, Adrian's sister, studied Clara's every movement, sensing the spark that could ignite scandal. The exchange turned electric. "People say your philanthropy is a way to buy back a guilty conscience," Clara pressed. Adrian's smile deepened, controlled, practiced. "And what if it is? At least I pay my debts, Ms. Miles. But tell me, can you say the same?" The question hit harder than applause ever could. Clara's pen paused mid-note. For a heartbeat, neither of them breathed. When the broadcast ended, polite clapping filled the hall. Adrian offered his hand, steady, commanding. "You can't judge a man you haven't understood," he murmured, just loud enough for her alone. Later that night, a bouquet of white orchids arrived at Clara's desk. The card read, "Dinner. Tomorrow. No cameras." She told herself she would go only to finish the story. But as she traced his signature, curiosity folded into fascination. She had no idea the question she asked tonight would echo through every vow, every betrayal, and every silent tear that followed. Clara Miles told herself she was only meeting Adrian Voss for a follow-up interview, but the private dinner he arranged at the Meridian looked nothing like journalism. Candlelight reflected off crystal, and the skyline burned gold behind him. He rose when she arrived, smiling with the kind of warmth that looked genuine, but warmth can be another form of strategy. Why had he chosen her from every reporter in the city? How much did he already know about her family's ruined past? And what would happen if he discovered she was hiding that truth from him? Adrian guided her to the table. "Relax, Miss Miles," he said softly. "No cameras tonight, remember?" She wanted to believe his charm was harmless, but there was calculation beneath every syllable. Still, as they spoke about art, charity, and ambition, she saw flashes of the man behind the fortune. A boy who had once scraped oil from his father's hands in a garage that smelled of gasoline and hunger. He mentioned it briefly, almost accidentally, and the moment disarmed her. "You make billions sound lonely," she said. "It is," he replied. "But loneliness keeps a man honest." The conversation was too intimate for a first dinner, yet neither wanted it to end. Outside, rain slid down the glass like the world trying to listen in. By midnight, the journalist had vanished and the woman remained. Clara laughed for the first time in months, the kind of laughter that erases pain, but guilt crept in through the cracks. Somewhere out there, her father was still paying the price for one of Voss Industries' acquisitions, a hostile takeover that had bankrupted his small tech firm. When she returned home, the voicemail light blinked red. Marcus Hale's voice crackled through the speaker. "Interesting choice of dinner company, Clara. You know, the man who destroyed your father just poured you wine worth more than his entire factory. Call me. We should talk about what justice looks like." She deleted the message, but his words stuck like thorns. The next day she received a file from Marcus, proof that Adrian's acquisition hadn't been clean. The documents showed insider trading, a move that ruined dozens of families. She wanted to confront Adrian, but she needed confirmation first. Instead, she accepted his invitation to a second dinner. He greeted her with that same unshakable confidence, but his eyes lingered longer this time. "You're different, Clara. You look like someone who already knows what I'm going to say." Her hand trembled around the glass. "Maybe I do." That night, while Adrian walked her to her car, Marcus watched from across the street, recording everything. Adrian leaned close, lowering his voice. "I don't trust easily," he said. But you're making me want to try. Her heart fluttered. But trust, she knew, was the one thing she could never offer him. Clara Miles had spent her career chasing the truth, but now she was running from it. Each morning she woke in Adrian's penthouse, surrounded by the soft hum of wealth, and each night she slipped into dreams haunted by her father's broken voice. Love had come unexpectedly, but guilt had come louder. How could she love the man her father despised? Why did the truth feel heavier the longer she stayed silent? And what would happen if Adrian ever found out what she'd done? The rain hadn't stopped for days. Adrian worked from home, deep inside his office lined with books and glass trophies. Clara stood at the doorway watching him, every gesture exact, every word deliberate. He was beautiful in a way that frightened her, a man too composed, too aware of every weakness around him. When he noticed her, his expression softened. "You can come in, you know," he said, closing his laptop. "You don't have to treat me like I'm dangerous." She smiled faintly. "But you are." Adrian laughed, the sound low and rare. "Maybe. But only to people who lie to me." Her pulse stuttered. For a moment she thought he already knew. Then he crossed the room, took her hand and kissed her forehead, gentle, disarming. "I trust you, Clara. That's not something I say easily." She couldn't look him in the eye. When he left for a meeting, she opened the drawer of his desk. Inside were folders stamped confidential, acquisition records. Her hands trembled as she inserted the microchip Marcus had given her, copying data to prove Adrian's crimes. But halfway through, her conscience rebelled. She wanted to pull it out, to stop, but the file transfer beeped complete. That single sound felt like betrayal made audible. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Clara yanked the drive free and shoved it into her pocket. Adrian entered, phone pressed to his ear, eyes sharp as glass. "Cancel the meeting," he said to the caller. "Something's come up." He ended the call and studied her face. "You look pale. Everything all right?" She forced a smile. "Just tired." He nodded, walking past her to the window. "Funny," he said quietly, "I was thinking the same thing about us." Her throat went dry. He turned, smiling faintly, but his gaze lingered on her shaking hands. "Dinner tonight?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. After he left again, she collapsed into the chair, staring at the empty desk. The guilt pressed down like a physical weight. Outside, lightning cracked across the skyline, reflecting off the glass tower that bore his name. From across the city, Marcus watched the same lightning from his own apartment, smirking as he uploaded the stolen data. "You did well, Clara," he muttered. "He'll never see it coming." But Adrian wasn't a man who missed much. From the security room one floor below, his technician turned toward him. "Sir, motion sensors show someone accessed your office." Adrian's eyes narrowed, unreadable. "Don't stop them," he said. "I want to see how far they'll go." Adrian Voss believed in precision, the right deal, the right time, the right gesture. But love had a way of mocking his rules. Tonight, in the glow of the Manhattan skyline, he was planning something that scared even him. He had built empires and crushed rivals, but could he build a life with someone whose eyes held secrets? Why did her smile look both fragile and rehearsed? And what truth was hiding behind the woman who claimed to love him? The rooftop garden sparkled with lanterns. Musicians tuned their strings under the night wind. Adrian adjusted his cufflinks and stared at the ring box in his hand, a diamond encircled by smaller stones, designed by the same artisan who'd forged his mother's wedding ring. Beauty wrapped around legacy. Clara arrived in a navy gown that caught the moonlight like liquid silk. For a moment he forgot the world. But beneath her grace was panic. Marcus had called earlier, warning her that time was running out. The media leak was ready, the story of Adrian's alleged crimes. She wanted to stop it, but Marcus had reminded her, "If you back out now, you'll be the one exposed. The files came from your hands." Adrian stepped closer, studying her face. "You're shaking," he said. She forced a laugh. "Maybe it's the altitude. Or maybe it's something else." His voice softened. "You think I don't notice when someone's carrying a burden?" She looked away, afraid the truth was visible in her reflection. He reached for her hand, dropping to one knee. "Clara Miles, before the world called me ruthless, I was just a boy who thought no one would ever see him as good. But you did. You made me believe I could still be a man worth loving." Tears blurred her vision. The audience of friends and executives gasped when he opened the ring box. "Will you marry me?" It should have been the perfect moment. But perfection rarely survives truth. Her heart screamed no, not because she didn't love him but because she did. Deeply. Desperately. She nodded instead. "Yes." Applause exploded. Adrian smiled, relief washing over his face as he slid the ring onto her finger. Cameras flashed. Somewhere behind them, Lena Voss, his sister, captured the scene on her phone, her expression unreadable. Later that night, as they celebrated below the fairy lights, Marcus's text arrived on Clara's phone. The files go public at 8 a.m. Congratulations, fiancé. Her breath caught. Across the table, Adrian raised his glass to her. To us, he said. To trust. She clinked her glass against his, her smile trembling. To trust, she echoed. But inside she felt the ground shift beneath her feet. And Adrian, whose instincts had built an empire, noticed the tremor in her hand. He smiled, but his eyes turned cold. Interesting, he thought. She said yes like someone saying goodbye. Clara Miles woke to the quiet hum of the city below, the diamond on her finger glinting like an accusation. Last night she'd said yes, but this morning her heart said why. Why did love feel like guilt wearing a prettier dress? How had a single yes turned into a lifetime sentence? And what would happen when the secret she'd hidden exploded in public? Sunlight spilled across the sheets, painting Adrian's side of the bed empty. She found him in the living room, already dressed, watching the financial news. He looked calm, but his stillness was always deceptive. Good morning, fiancé, he said without turning. She smiled faintly. You were up early. Always. But today felt different. He glanced back. You should see the headlines. The screen showed their engagement photo, her tearful yes frozen in perfection. Billionaire Voss finally off the market, the headline read. But beneath that headline, another alert crawled across the ticker. Breaking. Anonymous leak reveals illegal trading within Voss Industries. Evidence under review by federal authorities. Clara's blood ran cold. Adrian muted the TV. I'm being accused of something interesting. She tried to sound surprised. That's absurd. Who would? Who indeed, he interrupted softly. The leak came from my private office. Silence. He turned fully now, his gaze steady but unreadable. You're the only person I've given unrestricted access to that space, Clara. Her mouth went dry. Are you saying you think I? He smiled, not kindly. I'm saying I don't want to think that. For a moment time stood still. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, jaw tightening. I need to handle this. Stay here. Don't answer calls. When he left, the silence screamed. Clara collapsed onto the couch, staring at the engagement ring as if it were a shackle. She wanted to call Marcus, but her phone was gone, taken sometime during the night. Across town, Marcus Hale stood before a group of reporters, his grin smug as he fed them documents. The world loves fairy tales, he told the cameras, but every kingdom has its corruption. You'll find Adrian Voss's at the core. By afternoon, the story had gone viral. Commentators debated whether Clara had been a pawn or a partner. Social media dissected her every photo, every smile. Back in the penthouse, Adrian returned just before dusk. He looked tired but not defeated. They think they can bury me, he said quietly. But they've forgotten one thing. She swallowed hard. What's that? He met her eyes. I don't lose. He brushed past her, heading to his office. The door closed with a sound too soft for the fury behind it. Clara stood frozen, caught between fear and love. The sun dipped below the skyline, and in the reflection of the glass wall she saw herself, not the journalist, not the fiancé, but the traitor. And yet, as night fell, a cruel thought whispered through her mind. What if Marcus lied too? Adrian Voss had been accused before, but never like this. Overnight, his billion-dollar reputation had turned into breaking news spectacle. The markets were crashing, investors panicking. But his voice, when he called the emergency board meeting, stayed calm. Why did the calm feel more dangerous than rage? How could one woman's secret bring down an empire built on control? And what was Adrian planning now that the world thought he'd lost everything? At the glass table sat 12 executives, each whispering theories. Adrian stood at the head, immaculate in black, the picture of authority. We don't defend, he said. We redirect. Lena Voss frowned. Adrian, the evidence looks bad. Someone inside leaked private records. He raised a hand. Yes, and I intend to find them. But first, we remind the world that perception can be purchased. A public relations aide scribbled notes, trembling. Across the city, Clara sat in her apartment, her phone buzzing non-stop. Marcus's name flashed again and again. She didn't answer. Guilt had hollowed her. Every headline felt like a mirror. You wanted justice, she told herself. But justice shouldn't taste like blood. At noon, she watched Adrian's press conference. Cameras flashed as he stepped onto the stage, serene. "I built this company on transparency," he said, "but ambition invites envy. False narratives spread faster than facts." He paused, scanning the crowd until his gaze found hers through the television lens, as if he knew she was watching. "I'll cooperate with every investigation. But I will not be destroyed by lies." The crowd erupted in applause. Online, opinion shifted almost instantly. Hashtags trended, #VosVictim, #corporate setup. Marcus cursed at his monitor. That night, he met Clara at a deserted pier. The wind whipped her hair as he shoved a folder toward her. "He's playing you," Marcus hissed. "You think he loves you? He's building a narrative. When this is over, you'll be the scapegoat." She opened the folder. Inside, screenshots of an email chain supposedly between Adrian and a PR firm, planning to leak her name as the insider. Her heart pounded. This can't be real. Marcus leaned closer. "Wake up. You helped me expose him. Now he'll erase you to clean his image. Unless you stand with me publicly." She shook her head. "I can't destroy him completely." Marcus sneered. "Then he'll destroy you." Clara tore the folder in half, the pages scattering into the river. "I'll find the truth myself." When she returned home, Adrian was waiting by the window, his silhouette sharp against the city lights. "Long night?" he asked quietly. She froze. "I needed air." He studied her, unreadable. "You should be careful who you meet in the dark, Clara. The world is watching." He turned away before she could answer, leaving her with a question that clawed at her chest. Was he warning her, or threatening her? Clara Miles had lied before, but never to someone who looked at her the way Adrian did. His silence was worse than shouting, it felt like judgment wrapped in calm. She could almost feel it pressing against her ribs. Why did her betrayal feel more painful than his suspicion? How could she come clean without burning everything she'd begun to love? And what if the truth wasn't what either of them believed anymore? Days passed in a blur of investigations and interviews. Adrian barely came home. When he did, it was late, always calm, always composed, but the tension was a constant third presence in the room. Clara cooked, waited, rehearsed the words she needed to say. "I have to tell you something," she tried one night. He looked up from his tablet. "Is it the thing I already know?" The words froze her. "What?" Adrian sighed, setting the tablet down. "I had a background check done after the leak. Your father's company, MyTech Innovations. Acquired by one of my subsidiaries. It failed 6 years ago." She nodded weakly. "You destroyed it." He met her gaze. "No, Clara. Marcus Hale did. He used my name to force the acquisition. I was in Europe during that deal. By the time I learned what he'd done, the contracts were legal, irreversible." Her world tilted. "You're lying." He shook his head. "I don't need to lie to you. But I think he's been lying to you." She sat down, stunned. The memories of Marcus's manipulation, his push for revenge, it all blurred into new meaning. "I wanted to believe him," she whispered. "I thought I was fighting for justice." Adrian's expression softened. "You were fighting ghosts. And now you've given him everything he needs to finish what he started." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Adrian. I didn't know." He took a slow breath, closing the distance between them. "If I believed that, I'd still have to ask, do you love me, Clara? Or was I just another story?" Her voice cracked. "Both." He almost smiled, but his eyes glistened. "At least you're honest now." She reached for his hand. "Let me fix it." But he pulled away. "No. You've done enough. The board's already forcing me to step down until the inquiry clears." She gasped. "They can't." "They can," he said flatly. "And Marcus is counting on it. But I'll make sure he never touches what's mine again." He walked toward the door, stopping only once. "You'll be safe here until this is over." Her voice trembled. "Adrian, what are you going to do?" He turned slightly, his reflection a dark silhouette in the glass. "Whatever I must," he said. "Even if it means becoming the villain everyone already believes I am." When the door closed behind him, Clara felt the final thread of safety snap. Because love could forgive mistakes, but revenge never did. Adrian Voss stood before the mirror, fastening the final button of his white collar. The man staring back at him looked composed, unbreakable, but inside, a storm brewed darker than any boardroom battle. Today should have been the happiest day of his life, but happiness had become a luxury he could no longer afford. Why marry a woman who once betrayed him? How could love survive when built on lies? And what kind of man turns a wedding into his stage for revenge? The cathedral glowed with gold light and roses. Every socialite, investor and news outlet in New York waited inside, ready to witness the billionaire's fairy tale ending. But fairy tales, Adrian knew, were written by those who survived the truth. Clara arrived in a gown that shimmered like forgiveness. Her hands trembled as she stepped out of the car, her veil catching in the wind. Cameras flashed, capturing what the headlines would later call the most anticipated wedding of the year. But only two people knew it might never happen. Inside, Adrian greeted guests with calm precision. Lena, his sister, touched his arm. "You don't have to go through with this," she whispered. He looked at her. "I do. But not for the reason you think." When Clara walked down the aisle, the music swelled. The crowd rose. Adrian's gaze locked on her, so beautiful, so haunted. She met his eyes and saw no warmth there, only a quiet finality. Father Gregory opened his book. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here." Adrian raised a hand. "Before we begin, I have something to say." A ripple of confusion swept through the cathedral. Cameras turned, hungry. "6 months ago, I met a woman who challenged me in ways no one ever dared. She asked for truth when the world preferred lies. She said she believed in justice. I believed in her." Clara's heart pounded. "But love built on secrets," he continued, "isn't love, it's theater." Gasps echoed. Clara's vision blurred. "This morning," Adrian said, voice steady, "the investigation concluded. The real traitor was Marcus Hale. He forged documents, leaked data, and used Clara Miles as his weapon. She didn't know. But she also didn't trust me enough to ask." Reporters whispered furiously. Clara stepped forward, tears spilling. "Adrian, please?" He turned toward her, eyes glinting under the cathedral lights. "You betrayed me once, Clara. But today I betray your expectations." He took her hand, lifting it for everyone to see. "I forgive you." The words struck harder than any punishment. The audience fell silent. Clara sobbed openly. "Love isn't vengeance," he said softly. "It's mercy. And mercy is power." He kissed her forehead, then stepped back, letting the ring fall from his hand onto the marble floor. The sound echoed through the hall like a final judgment. Then he turned and walked away, leaving behind a stunned bride, a gasping crowd, and a world that would talk about that wedding forever. Clara Miles had been forgiven in front of the world, but forgiveness felt heavier than blame. The cathedral was still echoing with whispers when she stumbled outside, veil half torn, reporters shouting questions that sounded like accusations. Why did mercy sting more than punishment? How could love survive once it had been turned into spectacle? And what price must she now pay for the peace Adrian claimed to give her? By midnight, the internet was divided. Half called Adrian's act the greatest gesture of love ever televised, the other half called it the ultimate humiliation. Every news outlet replayed the moment he dropped the ring, a loop of heartbreak and grace. Clara hid in a hotel room miles from the city, the wedding dress hanging like a ghost in the corner. She turned off every device but couldn't escape the echo of his voice. "I forgive you." But what did that forgiveness mean? Freedom or exile? A knock broke the silence. When she opened the door, Lena Voss stood there, rain-soaked and uninvited. "You shouldn't be alone," Lena said, stepping inside. "Adrian told me you'd run." Clara laughed bitterly. "Run? He made sure I couldn't stay." Lena sat across from her. "He didn't do it to shame you. You don't know what mercy costs him." Clara's eyes narrowed. "He humiliated me in front of the world. But he also saved you," Lena replied. "Marcus is being arrested tonight. Adrian gave the investigators the evidence you stole. He told them he ordered you to take it." Clara froze. "He what?" "He took your crime as his own," Lena said quietly. "That's why he walked away." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Marcus Hale being dragged from his glass apartment, shouting about conspiracies no one cared to hear anymore. Clara sank to the floor, tears spilling freely. "He ruined himself for me." Lena nodded. "He always said love was a debt he couldn't afford. Now he's paid it in full." Hours later, Clara went to him. Adrian sat alone on the terrace of his penthouse, tie undone, staring at the city he'd once ruled. "I saw the news," she said. "They're clearing your name." He didn't look at her. "At a cost. The board demanded my resignation anyway. Voss Industries will survive, but not with my name on it." She stepped closer. "Why did you take the blame for me?" He smiled faintly. "Because revenge ends the story. Forgiveness keeps it alive." Tears blurred the skyline. "So what happens now?" Adrian finally turned, eyes weary but kind. "Now we see what survives when everything else is gone." He rose, brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered, "Go start your life, Clara. Don't let mine define it." She wanted to argue, but he was right. Love had cost them both everything, but somehow, it had also given them something purer: truth. Adrian Voss had vanished from the public eye, but absence only made the legend grow. A month after the wedding that never was, his penthouse stood empty, its glass walls reflecting the city that had both crowned and crucified him. He'd left no farewell, only a letter addressed to Clara Miles and a single line scrawled at the bottom: "Truth is never lost, it just changes hands." Why had he disappeared without saying goodbye? How could a man so powerful dissolve into rumor? And what secrets still hid beneath the story the world thought it understood? Clara tried to rebuild a quiet life. She published an exposé titled Mercy and Power, turning the chaos into testimony. Critics called it a masterpiece of moral journalism, but she wrote it as penance, not triumph. Her book tour ended in Venice, where whispers of Adrian's new ventures floated like ghost stories through cafe windows. Some said he was rebuilding under a different name. Others swore he'd gone underground to expose corrupt billionaires across Europe. One evening, returning to her hotel, Clara found a sealed envelope at her door. No return address. Inside lay a photograph: Adrian standing in a crowded marketplace, handing a loaf of bread to a child. On the back, a message in his familiar script: "You once asked if wealth can cleanse a conscience. It can't. But giving it away might." Her hand shook. She turned the picture over again. In the corner, partly cropped, she saw the blurred outline of a woman beside him, Lena Voss. The signature beneath read A&L Foundation. Her pulse raced. Lena hadn't merely visited her out of concern, she'd been helping Adrian disappear. Together, they had built a charity network using the assets he'd quietly liquidated before his resignation. The twist wasn't that he'd lost everything, it was that he'd chosen to. Later that night, Clara walked to the Rialto Bridge, the letter pressed to her heart. The city lights shimmered on the canal like scattered diamonds, and she finally understood the shape of his revenge. He hadn't punished her with exposure. He'd punished the world with generosity, proving that mercy could wound pride deeper than vengeance ever could. A stranger brushed past her and dropped something into her hand, a key stamped with the initials AV and a note. "For the story you haven't written yet." She looked up, but the man was already gone into the crowd. The next morning, global news broke. The mysterious benefactor funding hospitals across continents was none other than Adrian Voss, operating under a humanitarian foundation that had doubled the fortune he once claimed to abandon. Clara closed her eyes and smiled through her tears. The billionaire groom hadn't disappeared. He'd rewritten what power meant. And for the rest of her life, every time she told their story, she began it the same way. He was betrayed on his wedding day, but his revenge left the whole world speechless.